Chapter 11. The Song of Jigglypuff. It had been about 2 days since the group had left Pewter City and had their encounter with Paul. Ash had been quite upset the rest of the day, but had made sure to not take it out on his friends. He had a couple of days to cool down and was back to his normal self. Currently, he was devouring his second bowl of the soup Brock had made for lunch. As Brock had told them, he was quite the cook. With all the great food and chores that Brock had willingly done so far, Ash, Serena, and Misty wondered how they had survived the first week on their journey without him. He was certainly a welcome to their team. Ash, Serena, and Misty were quite curious about the Nurse Joy incident for a while, but they had put it behind them for now. The humans in the group weren't the only ones who were enjoying great food at the moment. Their Pokemon were as well. Due to Brock's knowledge on Pokemon's tastes, he was able to make special food for each of their own Pokemon. Being homemade, it was a higher quality than what was found at the Pokemart. Brock had even made Pikachu some ketchup-flavored Pokemon food. This made Pikachu quickly warm up to Brock. "Man, this food is great! You've done it again, Brock!" Ash praised as he finished his second bowl of soup. Serena and Misty nodded in agreement. "Thanks, Ash. There's still some more if you want another helping." "I'm pretty full now," Brock said. "Awesome!" Ash exclaimed as he went over to refill his bowl from the big pot over the fire. Admittedly, Ash didn't have the best table manners, but Serena, Misty, and Brock had gotten over it by now. At least Ash made sure there were never any leftovers so they didn't have to waste food. Once Ash was back to the table and eating his third helping, Brock decided to take out the map and spread it out on the table in the middle of the group. "Alright, according to this map, Mount Moon isn't too far from here. We should be there by tomorrow morning," Brock told them. As the group looked, they could sure enough see a large mountain in the distance. "Isn't Mount Moon supposed to have some pretty mysterious Pokemon in it? I also remember that scientist guy at the museum saying there were some Pokemon fossils in there," Serena stated. "It has both." Brock nodded to confirm Serena's question. "It's also said to house the legendary Moonstone, which is said to have mysterious powers." "What kind of mysterious powers?" Ash asked as he took another spoonful of soup. "Some Pokemon are said to respond to the power of the Moonstone once they come in contact with it and evolve, like the Nidoran family or a Jigglypuff," Brock answered. "Wow, it sure would be neat to see the Moonstone," Ash said. "Don't forget, Ash, it isn't like the Moonstone is everywhere. It's probably hidden deep in Mount Moon and carefully protected by the Pokemon there. The few people that do manage to get a small piece of the Moonstone charge a lot of money for it," Misty told him. "I know, but why is it so important that the Moonstone be protected?" Ash asked curiously. Before the rest of the group was able to come up with a decent answer, they heard a rustling noise inside of the bushes. The group stared at the bush until a Jigglypuff walked out. Jigglypuff was a small pink round Pokemon with very large adorable eyes and short arms and feet sticking out from it. It also had a small curly tuft on top of it. In short, it looked like a puffball with a face. It must have been attracted by the smell of Brock's cooking. Unfortunately, there wasn't any left for it. "Jigglypuff!" it said in a high-pitched voice. "Oh, a Jigglypuff! It's so cute!" Misty squealed while blushing. "It sure is," Serena said happily while she took out her Pokedex to scan it. "Jigglypuff, the balloon Pokemon. It captivates foes with its huge round eyes and then lulls them to sleep by singing a soothing melody," the Pokedex said. "I'm gonna capture it," Misty said as she took out an empty Pokeball. "Hey, what happened to you only having water Pokemon?" Ash asked. "There's nothing wrong with wanting to capture an adorable Pokemon like Jigglypuff," Misty said while giving Ash a glare. "Whatever," Ash mumbled. "Go, Staryu! Use Tackle!" Misty shouted. Staryu and the rest of the Pokemon were still out of their Pokeballs, so it flew forward from behind Misty and launched itself into a spin, ramming in the Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff yelped in pain when the attack collided and it was knocked backwards. The group was expecting a counterattack, but it did something completely different. It began to cry. The group of humans and even their Pokemon stared in confusion for a moment at the strange behavior before Brock finally said, "I don't think this Jigglypuff really wants to fight right now." Serena then walked over the Jigglypuff and knelt down. "We're sorry, Jigglypuff. We didn't mean to upset you," she said. Jigglypuff wiped its tears and hopped into Serena's lap. "You're so adorable," Serena said as she rubbed it on the top of its head. Misty came over next and sat down next to Serena. "I'm sorry, Jigglypuff. I shouldn't have attacked you like that if you didn't want to fight," she said sorrowfully. Jigglypuff looked at Misty for a moment before nodding its head and replying, Puff, I know what will make you feel better. Why don't you sing for us? Jigglypuff are supposed to have beautiful voices, Serena suggested. Jigglypuff then got out of Serena's lap and looked at the ground in embarrassment. Aw, what's wrong? You don't want to sing for us? Puff, it said as it shuffled its feet on the ground. Are you just shy, Jigglypuff? Misty asked next. Jigglypuff finally looked up at the group and made a slight coughing noise and then shook its head. I think Jigglypuff is saying that it can't sing, Brock suggested as he and Ash walked over to them. That's silly. Whoever heard of a Jigglypuff that can't sing? Misty said carelessly and immediately put her hands over her mouth. Sure enough, when Jigglypuff heard that, it began to cry. Way to go, Misty, Ash muttered. Misty glared at Ash and looked at Jigglypuff again. I'm sorry again, Jigglypuff. That wasn't very nice of me to say, she said to it. Jigglypuff immediately stopped crying and jumped into Misty's lap to hug her. I still think it's cute, but who wants a Jigglypuff that can't sing? Misty muttered to herself before she realized she made her mistake again. Just like that, Jigglypuff immediately began to cry more. Serena then had an idea. I'm sure you know how to sing, Jigglypuff. Maybe you just haven't done it in a while. Why don't we help you learn how to sing again? She suggested. Jigglypuff! It squealed happily as it jumped out of Misty's lap and ran to Serena to hug her. The group had now returned all of their Pokemon except for Pikachu, and had packed up their supplies before making a makeshift stage for Jigglypuff. It consisted of a few large flat rocks for the stage, and a couple of flashlights leaned against the rocks to imitate the lights. They were hard to see because it was daytime, but it was the best the group could do at the moment. Okay, listen to the notes I sing, Jigglypuff, Serena said as she took a deep breath. She hadn't sang in a while and hoped she didn't embarrass herself. Do, re, mu, fa, so. Serena sang softly with her eyes closed. She then opened them and smiled at Jigglypuff. See how I control my voice and breathing as I sing the notes? You have a very pretty voice, Serena, Ash praised after she finished. Serena turned to Ash and smiled. She was just singing a few short notes right now to help Jigglypuff, but was still very pleased that Ash liked it. Thank you, Ash. Maybe I should sing to you Maybe I should sing for you sometime, she said as she gave him a wink. That would be great, Ash said while scratching his cheek. Brock looked back and forth between the two and smiled to himself. He also recalled how Ash and Serena acted around each other at his gym. I wonder, he thought. Jigglypuff said in annoyance to draw the group's attention back to it. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me show you again, Serena said in embarrassment as she went over the notes again. Now you try it. Jigglypuff then opened its mouth and tried to sing, but all that came out seemed to be a gagging sound of some sort. It then bowed its head in shame. Pikachu, Pikachu sang. It wanted to attempt to sing also since everyone else was. Hey, that's pretty good, Pikachu, Ash said while giving it a smile. Cha, it said as it rubbed the back of its neck. I'm sorry if my sounds are cringe, guys. Hey, you're hurting Jigglypuff's feelings, Misty scolded Ash when she saw Jigglypuff narrow its eyes. Jigglypuff then went over to Pikachu and gave it a swift kick in the behind before darting back to the stage. Choo, Pikachu moaned as it rubbed its bottom. It then prepared to shock Jigglypuff, but Ash quickly grabbed it before it let loose its electricity. Instead, Ash was shocked. Once Ash recovered about a minute later, the group continued to think as to what they could do about Jigglypuff's situation. The problem clearly wasn't that Jigglypuff just simply had a bad voice, it seemed to go a little deeper than that, like its throat was sore or something. I think I got it. Brock suddenly spoke up, causing the group to turn to him. There's actually a fruit that grows around this area that has special healing powers. What do you mean? Ash asked. The juices that are in these fruits have the power to heal one's throat if it's sore or tired. If Jigglypuff eats one, it might be able to sing, Brock answered. So let's go find one, Serena said enthusiastically as she picked up Jigglypuff to walk down the path. The rest of the group followed suit. Ah, here's one, Brock stated as he went up to a tree that had several of the fruits growing on it. He then reached out and plucked one from one of the trees, holding it in front of Jigglypuff. Go ahead, Jigglypuff, take a bite, Serena encouraged gently as Jigglypuff reached out its small arms to take the fruit from Brock. It then bit into the fruit and began to chew. Jigglypuff! It exclaimed happily as it swallowed. It clearly liked the taste. It then quickly ate the rest of the fruit. Serena then set Jigglypuff on the ground as the group waited expectantly. Jigglypuff then took a deep breath and tested its voice. Its voice sounded top-notch now. "That was great! Way to go, Jigglypuff!" Serena praised as she and the rest of the group cheered. Jigglypuff then looked at Pikachu a short distance away, who was cheering for it also. Despite this, Jigglypuff still wanted a little payback. It also wanted to rub it in Pikachu's face that it could sing now. Jigglypuff went over to Pikachu and delivered another kick in the behind before running over to hide behind Serena. The group sighed at Jigglypuff's antics while Pikachu glared at Jigglypuff. It wasn't going to try to shock it again after what happened last time. Jigglypuff was also hiding behind Serena, so Pikachu supposed Jigglypuff would get away with it. For now. "Why don't you go ahead and sing for us, Jigglypuff?" Serena suggested while everyone gathered around it. Jigglypuff nodded its head, closed its eyes, and began to sing. Its voice sounded absolutely beautiful. The group smiled as they heard the song. Everyone was right. Jigglypuff really do have excellent voices. Ash, Serena, Misty and Brock, and Pikachu felt their eyes getting droopy. They thought this song sounded so peaceful, so relaxing, so thud. Everyone listening to Jigglypuff hit the ground and fell asleep. Despite the seemingly peaceful landing, the group stayed asleep through the rest of Jigglypuff's song. Hearing the sound, Jigglypuff abruptly quit singing and opened its eyes. To its great shock and anger, everyone was asleep. Jigglypuff certainly didn't think it was a boring singer. It thought that was a really inconsiderate thing to do. It went over and began to shake everyone in an attempt to wake them up. It was no good. Everyone was still asleep. Jigglypuff wasn't going to take this. It went over to one of their backpacks and found a marker inside. It would certainly show them. Ash groggily opened his eyes and gave a yawn. That was a good nap," he said to himself. He heard stirring beside and turned towards the others in the group. They all hid their faces away from him as they slowly sat up and also gave a yawn and stretched. "Did you guys also nap too?" Ash asked them. "Mm-hmm." Serena nodded sleepily before she and everyone else turned to Ash. Ash then let out a loud gasp. Oddly enough, everyone else did as well. "What happened to your face?" they all yelled in surprise. "What do you mean?" they all asked again at the same time. It was then the group realized that all their faces had something wrong with them. They all had silly little marker doodles drawn on them, and it looked terrible. The humans and Pikachu quickly wiped their faces free of the marker drawings and looked around for the culprit. They then spotted a Jigglypuff a short distance away, giving them a glare. "Did you do this to us, Jigglypuff?" Misty asked. "Puff!" It responded with a curt nod. "Why did you do that to us?" Misty asked again. "Puff!" Jigglypuff puffed itself up and gave an even more intense glare as if asking, "Do you seriously not know?" "It must be because we fell asleep while I was singing," Serena realized. "I wouldn't be happy either if someone fell asleep while I was performing for them." "We're sorry we fell asleep, Jigglypuff," Misty said apologetically. "Do you forgive us?" Jigglypuff seemed to think for a moment before it softened its glare and nodded its head. "I have an idea," said Brock. "Why don't we let it try to sing to our Pokemon? Surely one of them will stay awake." "That's a good idea," the rest agreed. A few minutes later, the group had all their Pokemon out in front of Jigglypuff as it began to sing to them. Ash, Brock, Serena, Misty, and Pikachu had gone behind a tree in case they fell asleep again. Once Jigglypuff had finished, it saw that every single one of their Pokemon had fallen asleep as well. Falling asleep once was one thing, but twice was inexcusable. It was very upset now. A few minutes later, the group came out from behind the tree and sighed when they saw that all of their Pokemon had fallen asleep and had marker doodles all over their faces. They quickly wiped off the drawings from their Pokemon's faces and returned them to their Pokeballs. There was no need to wake them and let them know Jigglypuff had messed with them. They then turned back to Jigglypuff and saw it had puffed itself up again and looked even angrier than the last time. There had to be a way to fix this problem. "What do you guys think it is about Jigglypuff's song that keeps us falling asleep?" Ash asked the rest of them. "My guess is that Jigglypuff have special powers in their voices," Brock suggested. Despite their beautiful voices, Jigglypuff are never used to performing in concerts as singers because their songs always seem to make people fall asleep. It's supposed to be used as a defensive measure rather than entertainment. So, the only song Jigglypuff are able to sing is a lullaby? Serena asked. Yes and no. I don't believe it's the song itself that's making us fall asleep, but the Pokemon it's coming from, Brock said with his arms crossed. So no matter what Jigglypuff sings to us, we'll fall asleep no matter what? Ash guessed. Pretty much, Brock confirmed. Upon hearing this, Jigglypuff's eyes began to tear up, and it looked like it was about to cry again. What if it actually wasn't Jigglypuff singing the song to us? Serena asked. What do you mean, Serena? Ash wondered. We fall asleep because of the special powers that come from Jigglypuff. What if we listen to a recording of that song rather than Jigglypuff itself? Maybe we could stay awake like that, Serena suggested. Ah, I get what you're saying, said Brock. We can have Jigglypuff sing on the recorder and listen to the recording once it's done. Since it's just the voice rather than Jigglypuff, we might stay awake. It's definitely worth a shot. Serena then turned to Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff, will you please give us one more chance to listen to your song? She asked, then thought. If only so we don't get our faces drawn on again. Jigglypuff seemed to think for a moment before sighing and agreeing. Hold on, do we even have a tape recorder with us? Misty suddenly asked. I have one, Ash spoke up. It was actually one of the million things my mom packed for me before I even started my journey, though I have no idea why. Sounds good, let's try it, Serena said. A couple of minutes later, the group had a tape recorder ready, and Serena placed it in front of Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff, when I press the button, I want you to start singing. Once you're done, I need you to press the end button, which is this one right here in case we are asleep. Serena instructed while she gestured to each of the buttons. Jigglypuff then nodded to signify that it was ready. Okay, Jigglypuff, make this your best song yet, Serena said as she pushed the record button. Jigglypuff then began to sing. The melody was just as beautiful as it had been the first couple of times. Also, just like the last time, the group was starting to feel sleepy. They made sure to sit down and listen this time instead of standing up so they just wouldn't fall over again. They finally became so drowsy from the song they couldn't take it anymore and fell asleep once more. Once Jigglypuff was done, it saw that the group had fallen asleep again, much to its disappointment and sadness. It got over the urge to draw on their faces again and pressed the end button on the recorder as Serena had told it to. It really hoped they could at least stay awake through the recording, or Jigglypuff didn't know what it would do. The group woke up once again a few minutes later and immediately looked at each other to make sure Jigglypuff hadn't drawn on them again. They sighed with relief, seeing how that wasn't the case this time. Jigglypuff was surprisingly waiting patiently by the tape recorder for the group to wake up. It didn't look angry this time. If anything, Jigglypuff looked nervous. Everyone then walked up to Jigglypuff and the tape recorder and knelt beside it. So, are you guys ready? Serena asked. Everyone nodded in response. She then took a deep breath and pushed the play button. They were all hoping this would work just as much as Jigglypuff did. The group then began to hear Jigglypuff's voice over the recorder. Despite the recorder being slightly aged, it still did an excellent job at the audio. It sounded as if they were really listening to Jigglypuff's song. Everyone was anxiously waiting to see if they were going to get sleepy. So far, so good. The recording continued to play, and no one was getting sleepy yet. Jigglypuff closed its own eyes at the tension. It really didn't want to see anyone fall asleep again. The recording finally ended after a few minutes. Not hearing anything, Jigglypuff feared the worst. It slowly opened one eye and saw that Pikachu was still awake. Filled with hope, Jigglypuff opened its eyes fully now and saw everyone was still awake. Everyone then broke out into applause. Bravo, Jigglypuff! Good job! They all cheered. Jigglypuff was extremely happy. It took a few bows in front of everyone. It certainly looked pleased. A recording may not have been as good as the real thing, but as long as it was its voice and everyone stayed awake, that was good enough for Jigglypuff. The group had already packed up their things. It was only about an hour until sunset, and the group still wanted to get a little bit more traveling done by the end of the day so they could still be at Mount Moon by tomorrow. Well, Jigglypuff, I guess this is where we all part ways. I wish you luck with your singing, Serena said with a smile as she reached down to rub it on the head again. Jiggly? It said while tilting to the side and giving Serena a questioning look. You'll be just fine now, Jigglypuff. Good luck with everything, Misty said. Goodbye, Jigglypuff, Ash and Brock said. Pika! Pikachu waved while on top of Ash's right shoulder. With that, the group turned around and continued on their way, but they heard footsteps behind them. They turned around and saw that Jigglypuff was following them. What's the matter, Jigglypuff? Serena asked as she went over to it. Puff, puff, it said in a sad tone. You don't want us to leave? Serena asked, receiving a nod from the Pokemon. You know, Jigglypuff, we all get along pretty well and like each other. Why don't you come with us? Brock suggested. Jigglypuff, it said happily. Now we can listen to your performances anytime you want us to. Serena smiled, which caused Jigglypuff to become even happier. That's great, but who's going to be Jigglypuff's trainer? Ash asked. They each pondered over the answer, but didn't need to wait for long as Jigglypuff made the decision for them. Jigglypuff leaped at Serena and gave her a hug. Oh, you want me to be your trainer, Jigglypuff? Serena asked. Jigglypuff nodded enthusiastically. It only makes sense, Serena. You were the one that helped Jigglypuff and talked to it the most out of all of us, Ash told her. In that case, I'd be happy to be your trainer, Jigglypuff. Oh, I wish I could have trained it. Misty sulked slightly. Jigglypuff then looked up at Serena and smiled, but it was soon replaced with a mischievous look. Serena smiled back somewhat slyly as well. Oh, I see. You want to battle now, don't you? She asked. Jigglypuff nodded and jumped out of Serena's arms, running in the opposite direction until it thought it was a suitable distance away. You're on, Serena said. She then thought about which Pokemon she should use. Charla no doubt had battled before, so it would have the advantage. But she also figured she hadn't really battled with Nidoran yet, and it could use the practice. I choose you, Nidoran, Serena said as she threw her Pokeball and released it. Nidoran then ran in front of Serena and stood a short distance away from Jigglypuff. Alright Nidoran, let's do this! Use Fury Swipes! Serena called. Nidoran ran forward ready to swipe at Jigglypuff with its sharp claws. But Jigglypuff was ready and jumped into the air and began floating away out of reach of Nidoran. Jigglypuff then decided it was time for a counterattack. It floated down at a much faster speed than one would think and struck Nidoran with one of its short arms. It had used a pound attack. Not giving Nidoran a chance to retaliate, it began to mercilessly slap it continuously, a double slap attack. It's okay, try to shake it off, Nidoran, Serena said once Jigglypuff finished its attacks. Nidoran shook itself slightly and went to attack Jigglypuff, but it was already floating in the air again. Since we can't reach it now, let's use a long-range attack, Nidoran. Use Poison Sting, Serena commanded. Nidoran then shot a barrage of glowing needles from the small horn on its head. But once again, Jigglypuff dodged them due to its quicker than expected speed in the air. Jigglypuff definitely has the advantage in the air. I need to find a place for Nidoran to take cover behind so Jigglypuff won't see it, Serena thought. She then noticed off to the side that there were a few trees to the side of the field they were in. Take cover behind those trees, Nidoran, and constantly change your position so Jigglypuff can't find you, Serena called. Once Nidoran had run into the small group of trees, Jigglypuff was unable to see Nidoran anymore. Even though it was in the air, the branches of the tree made it difficult to see. The balloon Pokemon had no choice but to deflate itself and search for Nidoran on foot. It followed Nidoran into the small set of trees and began the search, but it didn't see Nidoran sneaking up from behind. Then, when Nidoran got close enough, Quick Nidoran, Poison Sting, Serena called. Nidoran then sprang forward and shot the glowing needles right into Jigglypuff's backside, causing it to cry out in pain. Use your Fury Swipes before it can recover, Serena continued. Nidoran then began swiping continuously at Jigglypuff with its claws, but Jigglypuff pushed through the Fury Swipes and stuck Nidoran with another pound, which then caused it to go flying into the air. Serena saw that Nidoran twisted itself into an upright position in midair and knew it was ready for another command. Alright Nidoran, Poison Sting, she called. Nidoran then launched its needles at Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff was too slow to dodge the attack on the ground, and thus was struck by the attack. It then fell over onto the ground on its back, and Serena saw her chance. That was great, Nidoran! Now, Pokeball, go! She cried as she threw the Pokeball forward. The Pokeball sailed forward and hit Jigglypuff dead on. Jigglypuff was sucked into the Pokeball, and then it fell to the ground and began to shake. The ball finally stopped and dinged, signifying Jigglypuff had been successfully captured. Serena then ran over to the Pokeball to pick it up and held it out in front of her. "All right, I caught a Jigglypuff!" she exclaimed. She then pet Nidoran for a job well done and returned it to her Pokeball. "That was great, Serena! We now have 3 Pokemon each. Once we get some training in, you'll be in great shape for the Battle Chateau in Cerulean City," Ash told her. "Yep. Mount Moon is supposed to have some interesting Pokemon in there too. I'm pretty excited to see them. I bet we can get some experience there as well," Serena agreed. "Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go to Mount Moon," Ash said enthusiastically as he took off running with Pikachu, and Serena not too far behind. "Hey, wait for us, Ash!" Brock and Misty called out as they tried to keep up. Both Ash and Serena were greatly encouraged by their careers as Pokemon trainers by now. Ash had caught 2 other Pokemon since he started his journey, as well as gotten his first badge. Serena had also caught 2 Pokemon and felt like she was a much better battler by thinking up strategies. She had been unable to participate in a Battle Chateau challenge since Viridian City, but she knew she would get her chance soon. It was definitely looking like a bright future for the two. They were both eager to get to Mount Moon as soon as possible to see the mysterious things there. If only they knew that things weren't quite peaceful at the mountain right now.